concerning the minutes of the meetings held on the 27th of May, 24th of June, 30th of June, and the 21st of July have already been issued to members. The Secretariat hasn't received any proposals for amendments, so can we confirm these 4 sets of minutes, please? Thank you. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2. Matters arising from previous meetings. The Bills Committee has not discussed the paper summarizing the views from the deputations and the administration's response. So this is paper 2027 bracket 03. So perhaps we can now invite the administration in. Yes. So we would like the Deputy Secretary to take us through paper 2027 bracket 03.
多謝主席。
Thank you. So, Chairman, this is the administration's response to the deputation's views concerning section 68A. Relationship between insurers and insurance agents. Now concerning the appointed agent, I believe there is some misunderstanding. Are we on 14102? No, this is paper 2027 1314 bracket 03. It's a table. Have you found the paper, Deputy Secretary? Yes, Chairman. This is a summary of public comments received and the administration's response. In fact, there are 8 main issues, and I will take members through them one by one. First of all, composition of the IIA. We propose that there will be a chairman, a CEO, and 6 directors. And there should be directors from the insurance sector. And some have said that, say, 25% of the directors should be from the industry. We don't think this is really appropriate. This is not an industry association. This is a regulatory body. And so we have to ensure that the IIA is independent. Next, independent advisory committees. There will be 2 IACs, one for life insurance and the other for general insurance. And the IAC will comprise members from the insurance industry, and there are views that a minimum number of meetings per year be prescribed. Now, in the bill, we have stated that there should be a minimum of 1 meeting per or every 3 months, but of course, if necessary, the IACs can hold more frequent meetings. And some have said that there should be a marketing committee, and we are willing to accept this suggestion. So concerning this market development committee, this idea will be referred to the IIA for its consideration. And then next one, delegation of functions. Now concerning banks being agents, and with the approval of the CE in Council, the powers will be delegated to the HKMA. In other words, the HKMA will carry out inspection with regard to the bank's insurance intermediary activities. But then concerning sanctions, these will be handled by the IIA. We do not want banks to be inspected by two different regulatory bodies. And in fact, many have indicated that this is an appropriate arrangement. And some have said that as there will be two regulatory bodies, inconsistent standards may be applied by the two different bodies. But then as we've pointed out, the two regulatory bodies will hold regular meetings and there will be mutual transfer of staff. Then next, accounting and financial arrangements. Some have asked whether the financial position of the IIA will remain sound and whether the IIA will continue to expand. Now, the budget of the IIA has to be approved by the Financial Secretary, and there is also internal monitoring. And also the audited documents will be submitted to the LegCo. Next, concerning the fit and proper persons, and then we require the insurance companies separate their accounts and funds for different types of insurance activities. Now, I think we'll deal with this paper first, and then we'll deal with the remaining 5 papers. But then this paper contains over 20 pages. All right, perhaps I can pause under accounting and financial arrangements, Chairman. All right. All right, so we'll pause here after accounting and financial arrangements. Mr. Sin. Concerning regulation or monitoring of the IIA to prevent it from overexpansion. Now, the bill doesn't state that its budget has to be presented to LegCo. But then for the SFC, the budget has to be presented to the FA panel on an annual basis. Now, so just want to know whether for the IIA, you're going to adopt the same arrangement as that for the SFC. Yes, Chairman, is correct. For the SFC, there is this arrangement. For the MPFA, there isn't such a requirement. The administration is open-minded, Chairman, on this one. And in fact, concerning the the requirement imposed on the SFC, in fact, it's an administrative requirement only. Now, the MPFA had been set up prior to the SFC, or let me say this: the SNF ordinance was passed in 2002, and that was after the setting up of the MPFA. So we can see that enhanced transparency has been the trend. And the IIA is going to charge a lot of fees. And of course, the fees will affect the budget. And the industry, I believe, is concerned about fee levels being too high. So I just want to know whether LegCo can at least ask some questions with regard to the budget of the IIA. Yes, thank you. I note Mr. Sin's concerns. I want to say that the administration is open-minded. But I just want to remind members that for the SFC, the arrangement is an administrative one. It is not written in the ordinance. And I want to say that the fees are listed in the subsidiary legislation, and the levies will be included in an order which will also be subsidiary legislation to be approved by this council. All right? Is that clear? Mr. James To? Yes, Chairman, I've got a similar view, but I don't think we should put it in the bill. I understand that for levies received by the SFC, the levies are laid down in the law. And LegCo can give its input. Here we are talking about a lot of people to be regulated by the IIA. In other words, there are a large number of people in society will be affected. And so I don't think things should happen behind closed doors. And so maybe the fee levels should be included in the law. And I think the information should be tabled in this council. I'm not talking about the need to have this council giving approval. Yes, Chairman. The audited accounts have to be submitted to LegCo. Let me make myself clear. I'm talking about the budget. I'm not talking about the audited accounts. I haven't finished, Chairman. For the budget, there isn't such a requirement in the bill. And in fact, there isn't such a statutory requirement for the SFC either. For the SFC, it is an administrative arrangement. The Financial Secretary needs to approve the budget of a regulatory body. And concerning the levies, they are subsidiary legislation, and so they must be put before the council. Concerning whether the budget has to be tabled to the LegCo every year, we are open-minded. So are you suggesting that the budget of the IIA has to be presented to LegCo annually? Yes, Chairman. And the same applies to the SFC. And as a result, we have the opportunity to comment on the expenses of the SFC. But my understanding is that the budget of the SFC doesn't require our approval. Not approval, Chairman. I mean the budget to be tabled before us. Chairman, I want to say that I'm open-minded. Yes, for the IIA, we can have the SFC arrangement applied to the IIA. Mr. Chan Kin Po, I also agree that the IIA's budget should be presented to the FA panel for discussion. All right, Deputy Secretary? You've already told us that you are open-minded, and so I think this arrangement should be included in the bill. I think we can continue.
That takes us to page 5. That's about the regulatory powers in respect of insurers. Mainly speaking, the public feedback is that they're concerned about the criteria for deciding on the part of the IIA as to whether a person is a fit and proper person. It is contained in the bill. We want to be satisfied as to whether the person is professionally qualified, honest, reputable, reliable, financially sound. There was also this comment. There is already a current provision to say that there should be segregation of assets and liabilities. This is to make sure that the insurers are financially sound. Some insurers are worried as to whether this is going to be appropriate and whether this will be disadvantageous to the operation of certain insurers. I want to say that in terms of regulatory work, we have to provide for the financially sound operation of insurers. We do not intend to change it. There are also many comments in relation to the worry as to whether the power is excessive and whether there are checks and balances. There was an earlier paper to talk about our inspection powers as well as the investigatory powers. We are going to have a paper to talk about an insurance appeals tribunal. There is also a process, a review committee to check whether the procedures and the process are sound. So for the usual checks and balances of financial regulators will also be available here. I want to say that for a regulator, it must be given appropriate powers before it can play its role of being a regulator. That takes us to the sixth item. It's about the licensing regime for insurance intermediaries. There are certain controversies about Section 64J and Section 64K. Now, if a person is an agent, then can he also be a broker? Agent represents the insurer while because they represent the client and the insurer respectively. So if a person is to be both at the same time, there may be conflict of interest. We did have some discussion with the industry about the drafting of the provisions. We'll carry on with the dialogue with the industry. In principle, we all agree that for insurance agents and insurance brokers, there should be a provision to prevent a company or a person to be both at the same time. And then for other arrangements, there will be a separate paper for the details. I won't go over the details now. And then the IIA has to maintain a register for the intermediaries. The licensed persons should update their information held in the register within 7 days. Now we are responding to the views of the industry and prolong it to 14 days. If they find it still difficult to meet the requirement, we have an open mind. And then for intermediaries, there are many different kinds of intermediaries. Some could be a multinational company, or others can be individual. Now, for the IIA, before imposing a fine, in fact, in the first place, there must be a set of guidelines, and the guidelines will set out the criteria to be invoked before imposing the right amount of fine. Say, for example, the motive and whether remedial measures have been taken, and we doesn't want to jeopardize the financial status of the intermediary. And that takes us to the seventh as well as the eighth items. There's also about the inspection and investigation powers. we have already covered this point in an earlier paper. For transitional arrangements, we are going to touch on that in another paper, so I don't propose to go over them. The ninth item, which is more controversial, and that's about the disciplinary sanctions on licensed insurance intermediaries. Now, we have said that the intermediaries should act in the best interest of policyholder. If I may pause here and we can go to the specific paper on this topic. Why don't we ask if members have any questions before we move on to the question about in the best interest. If I may go to the seventh, on page 7. It's a point raised by the Hong Kong FI. And that's about not disclosing the details in relation to a disciplinary action. The government hasn't actually given a specific reply. Now, you are going to make an announcement, are you? Even though the appeal hasn't been dealt with, or the period to apply for appeal hasn't expired. You're interested in the question to appeal on the question about the reason to disclose. Well, the industry would like you to wait for the completion of the entire process before you disclose the details of the disciplinary action. As of now, you would just disclose everything even before completion of the appeal process. Non-disclosure before the appeal has been completed. Now, I think it is after the appeal process has been completed, then the IIA will be allowed to disclose the details. Is that right? In other words, my understanding of Mr. Chen's concern is a person may have his appeal allowed, but unfortunately, you would have already made an announcement, and then it will affect people's perception as harm already done. In other words, the industry will feel that they have been wronged or they have been affected unnecessarily. In both the case of individuals and companies. So would you consider this point? Well, in a disciplinary process, if the regulator carries out an investigation and comes to a decision, then it has to give an account and be accountable to the public. It can't simply bear in mind the interests of the person subject to the disciplinary action. Of course, it should be mindful as to whether it is fair or not. What is most important is that it must have a high degree of transparency. I don't know whether I am making a good comparison. Like in the case of the court, once the court has made a decision, the decision will be announced. The decision won't be held pending an appeal if there is one. So after the IIA has completed the investigation, the IIA is expected to give an account to the public. So we don't see a strong reason as to why we should not wait the completion of the appeal process, should there be an appeal, because we don't see something similar being allowed for. This is what the industry has asked for. But of course, you have referred to the practice in the judiciary and the practice in other disciplinary tribunals. I think it's important to find out whether this is the case or not. And of course, we don't expect the industry to be given special exceptional treatment. But I don't think you have actually addressed the problem. Now, the industry would like you to withhold the decision until completion of appeal. Yes, I can appreciate that it takes a long time. But of course, you have to think in terms of their case. Once you make an announcement, it means that all over Hong Kong, everybody would know about this matter. But then after an appeal, you will simply say that the appeal has been allowed, but you're not going to publicize the matter for the appellant. As to whether this is the practice all over the world, please try to research into the topic. Well, to me, indeed, it is the case that the court must announce the decision once a decision has been made. As to whether the defendant will appeal or not, it is up to the defendant to decide. If there is an appeal and if the appeal is allowed, then I'm sure the media would also report on the case. So I think this will be the arrangement. I don't think we should compare this case with court making decisions. What about the practice of the SFC? Are they doing what the industry is now asking for? That is, they wait for the completion of the entire process, even after appeal, before making an announcement about the decision? Or would it be the case that as soon as an initial decision has been made, then an announcement will be made? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What happens is that when a regulator thinks that the allegation of breach of law has been upheld, and then there is a decision, the decision won't be announced immediately. Rather, the decision will be forwarded to the complainee, and then he can respond as to whether he is accepting it or not, and whether there's an query. And then the response will go back to the regulator. The regulator takes that into account and then comes to a final decision. And at this point in time, the final decision will go to the complainee, and public announcement will also be made. They won't wait for the completion of the 28-day appeal period. So there is still a chance for appeal. That's not regarded as an appeal. To be exact, before the regulator makes an announcement about the decision, he can make representation. Yes, the opportunity of being heard. And after that, there will be a decision. And then the person being complained about will still have an appeal. Yes, he has 28 days to appeal. Is this similar to the practice for the SFC? Yes, same. Mr. Chen. Well, I think the crux of the matter is whether the SFC is doing the same. Now, the answer is in the positive. So we've heard your answer. We will study the matter and see if we want to come back with further views. If I may continue. Page 12. Section 64 ZZO. If there is to be an investigation by the IIA, and if the case is established, then there will be the award of costs of investigation. I want to know about the rationale. Now, in accordance with Section 64 ZZH, if there is a need for investigation, you may impose a cost. But then it is said that the salaries would not be sort of factored in. I want to know why there is such a requirement. Can you elaborate? We have a similar arrangement for other financial regulators. As provided for in the law, it is said that the IIA will, on its own initiative, carry out an investigation, and will carry out the investigation itself. In some special cases, with the consent of the FS, the IIA may engage a consultant to carry out the investigation. Upon completion of the investigation, when it is found that the subject of investigation has indeed breached the requirements, then in this case, the cost of investigation can be recovered from the subject of investigation. If it is not substantiated, then Section 64ZZO doesn't apply.
So for complicated cases, say for example, irregularities involving accounting, irregularities, forensic accounting is required. And this is extremely time and resource intensive, and experts outside the regulatory body have to be commissioned to carry out forensic accounting. And so it's fair to recover the costs from the alleged person. But then if after investigation the offense cannot be proved, then the alleged person will not have to pay. Then how come you're saying that LegCo will have to give some approval? This is about applying to LegCo for funding to carry out investigation. So in some cases, the approval of the FS is required. In other cases, the approval of the LegCo is required. Is it that for the latter, we're talking about huge sums of money? Requiring the financial secretary to give approval, in fact, aims to provide some check and balance. But then for concerning applying to LegCo, now, if the amount is substantial, then of course LegCo's monitoring will be required. So when the investigation cost is very high, then the FS's approval is not enough. And so to err on the safe side, you have to come to LegCo for funding. Yes, when necessary, we need to apply to LegCo for funding. So it's like taking out insurance. Now, so an intermediary may be investigated by you, and he may be punished, say a fine of $10 million, and then the license may be revoked, and the intermediary may even have to pay for the investigation cost. As you've pointed out, the amount may be very big because forensic accounting is required, and that's why one deputation has suggested that there should be a cap. Now, I'm not saying that I'm sympathetic towards those who commit irregularities, but then the intermediary may be able to afford the fine, but then if the intermediary has to pay for these professionals, then he may become bankrupt because the fees for hiring a professional may be very high, say several $1,000s per hour. Yes, Chairman. Concerning 64 ZZO, it will not be invoked very easily. Now, say if an intermediary has omitted something, then of course will not have to get outside professionals to carry out an investigation. So we have in mind companies having committed very serious irregularities. And we don't think this section will be invoked upon very often. In fact, there is a similar section in another ordinance to regulate financial institutions, and that section is rarely invoked upon. So, Deputy Secretary, my understanding is that for minor irregularities, international experts will not be hired to carry out an investigation. But then when we are talking about fraud cases involving many international companies, then you may have to get international experts to carry out an investigation. Also, it's like very important court cases where senior counsels, Queen's counsels have to be retained. And so you don't think there should be a cap because you don't want to tie the hands of the IIA, is that right? Chairman, it's difficult to decide where the cap should be. We have to have trust in the IIA that it will act reasonably. You said that there was a similar arrangement for the regulation of financial institutions, right? Now, if that person is guilty, then he has to bear the legal costs as well. Is that right? Chairman, so you're talking about the legal cost, but here we're talking about the investigation cost. I'm just trying to make a comparison. Concerning 64 ZZO, we're talking about recovering the investigation costs from the alleged person. If a case goes to the appeal tribunal, and if we win the case, then we can try to recover the legal costs from the person concerned. Mr. Chen Kim-Paul. Yes, I wish to continue, Chairman. So I think 64 ZZO will only apply to extremely complicated cases which cannot be handled by in-house staff. I think you should include more details in 64 ZZO, very complicated cases, very professional means to defraud others, and because some are worried that you may contract out a lot of your investigation work, and as a result, intermediaries will have to pay for your investigation costs for both the major cases as well as the minor cases. Because you're saying that here we're talking about violating the interests or potential interests of the insured. Now, I want to say that I will raise this point again when we do clause-by-clause scrutiny. I understand your objective, but I don't think the wording really fully reflects your intentions. Yes, Chairman, we'll go back and check. But we do not want to impose too much restriction on the regulatory body in its exercise of its powers. Now, Mr. Chen doesn't want really to tie the hands of the regulatory body. Then Mr. Chen is concerned that the regulatory body may use excessive means to investigate minor cases, and then those concerned may have to foot the bill for the investigation. Chairman, in overseas countries, the regulatory body issues documents on how it exercises its authority and how it imposes sanctions. But of course, it's difficult to include all the details in the bill. But we'll go back and check to see what we can do to perfect this section. Mr. Chan, anything else? Can we continue? Yes. Yes, Chairman. Page 16 to 18, concerning the discipline process and procedures. The intermediaries have to work in the best interest of the policy holders. Some are of the view that it's difficult to observe this rule because what is meant by in the best interest of the policyholders may not be very clear. And some say that this should be elaborated on in the code to be issued by the IIA. And some have said that this requirement should be scrapped. But then the Consumer Council thinks this is an appropriate arrangement because insurance policies are in fact very sophisticated and complicated contracts, and so there should be better protection for the policyholders. So concerning intermediaries having to act in the best interest of clients or policyholders, we think this requirement is appropriate. In fact, many overseas jurisdictions have included such a requirement in their laws. And we want to have the views of the industry on how they think this requirement can be implemented. In fact, we have a working group to discuss or to prepare for the setting up of the IIA, and there will be discussion in that group. And then the industry also wants to take part in the drafting of their guidelines or the codes. We welcome such views and comments. And in fact, that working group is a suitable forum to take this forward. So the working group will review the present guidelines, and in fact all the information is on the website of the FSTB, and practitioners in the industry can go to our website and look at the details. Yes, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Fernando Zhang? I want to ask about this regulatory body. If members of the public make complaints to the IIA, then how is the IIA going to handle the complaints? Chairman, at the moment for intermediaries there is self-regulation, but in the future there will be a licensing system. So is the member asking about the present situation or the future situation? The future situation, in other words, a complaint against an intermediary.
After a complaint has been received, the IIA can come to a view, that is, whether there is a case for further investigation. If there is initial evidence to justify investigation, investigation will be carried out to be followed by a report. The report will set out clearly whether there is sufficient evidence to establish that there is a breach of regulations on the part of the subject insurer or intermediary, and then there will be a disciplinary hearing. The hearing and investigation are carried out by different colleagues, as we don't want the investigators to we don't want the case to be heard by someone who has got preconceived ideas. We will impose an appropriate sanction, suspension, warning, reprimand, etc., according to the severeness of the severity of the case. The person being complained about will be notified of the initial decision. Then there will be the opportunity to be heard. That will be followed by the final decision. If the final decision is not acceptable, then within 28 days, an appeal can be lodged with the Independent Insurance Authority, the Insurance Appeals Tribunal, to be chaired by a former judge of the High Court or a person who would have been appointed as a judge of the High Court. If he is still aggrieved, he may lodge the case with the appeal court. If the complainant is not satisfied, is he accessible? Can he access the appeal process as well? Say the IIA's decision is not acceptable to the complainant. Well, I think if the complainant is not happy with the decision and he would like to have a further complaint, is that the case, Mr. Zhang? Not the defendant, is the original complainant. He's concerned about the interests of the complainant. Well, the IAT would not be dealing with the complainant case, because the IAT would only look at the decision of the IIA. Yes, the regulator will make a decision, and then the complainant may not be happy with that decision. Is there a mechanism for the complainant to complain about the decision? He can only take up the matter with the court. Dr. Zhang, do you understand? So in the case of the complainant, if he's not happy with the decision, then he has to bring it up, take it up with the court. The appeal court, no. Well, I think first of all he will apply for a JR. Mr. Ng Lang Sing. Yes, if I may go back to an earlier point. I think the HCAP has raised a point about the outstanding cases being dealt with by the self-regulatory organizations. How many of them are still outstanding, and how many of them will have to be taken over by the IIA? And then currently the matter is under the Hong Kong MA. In the future it will come under the IIA. We need time to make the transitional arrangements. There may be outstanding cases which are sort of part heard. I want to know whether they can be exempted. He will take up the question. Well, in fact, for today's meeting, we have a paper to talk about the details of the transition arrangements, but I can briefly talk about that. Yes, maybe the policy. Well, the broker may have a change of the CEO, and then the SRO has to be notified so as to update the details. Say if, for example, this is not being done in time, now in future, with the setting up of the IIA, this will not be sort of processed by the IIA. The Working Group on Transitional Arrangements is currently taking up the matter with the 3 SROs. What we have got in mind is to sort of impose a deadline. Say the IA may be set up on a certain date, and then 2 months prior to that date, we have to draw a line so as to prevent having something caught in the middle. We are still talking to the 3 SROs. We have some initial ideas as to how to deal with such matters. I think it is still an outstanding matter as to how long the gap should be. That is 2 months prior or what? Commissioner, currently we have got 3 SROs carrying out the self-regulatory work. Mr. Ng is concerned as to whether some of them are being overseen by the HKMA. It doesn't matter. Say, for example, there may be a case under investigation. According to the self-regulatory regime, the registration board will take care of that because banks are agents. So all the transitional arrangements are being worked out with the 3 SROs. As to your first point, that is how many such cases there would be. It will be difficult for us to make a guess. I think it is only when we replace the SROs with the new licensing regime, and then we set down the date, and then we can have an idea as to how many cases are outstanding. Currently, the 3 SROs will continue to deal with the cases under the jurisdiction. All right, Mr. Chen, just want to add a word here. Now, best interest, expert panels, etc. We are doing a lot of work behind the scene. We are grateful to the administration for trying to strive for a balance. The administration would like to be effective. On the other hand, they don't want to affect the intermediaries unnecessarily. I just want to emphasize that the dialogue is still ongoing. We haven't completed our work. No other questions? Let's continue. Pages 19 and 20. And that's about the IAT, the Appeals Tribunal. Mr. Chairman, can I ask for your permission to skip this part, as we do have a specific paper for this topic? And then there are certain miscellaneous items. Members, do you have any questions on the miscellaneous items? No? No questions? Then I think as the official has suggested, we can defer the discussion when we have our cross-by-cross scrutiny. All right. We have a total of 5 papers setting out lists of outstanding issues arising from the meetings held on the 27th of May, 30th of June, 21st of July, 20th of October, and 11th of November. When we discussed the paper 2027/13-14-03, we have covered some of the issues. But still, I think we may want to go through the following papers: 1637/13-14, 02, etc. Yes, this is about our response to the questions raised at the meeting held on the 27th of May. I'll be brief if we have already covered it. I think Mr. Alan Leung asked a question, that is whether the LegCo would also look at the guidelines of the IIA. They are not subsidiary legislation, so they don't have to be submitted to the LegCo. But then for subsidiary legislation, we have to go through the LegCo. Well, there is a three-tier system. Basic principles are contained in the principal ordinance with subsidiary legislation for the purpose of illustration. And then we have also got guidelines to assist the industry. And then operation of the two industry advisory committees and the communication with stakeholders. I've covered this, so I'm not going to repeat. Thirdly, composition of the IIA, whether we have to put a cap or the maximum number on the composition of the IIA in relation to the industry members. Covered already. Conduct requirement, mentioned already. And then discipline process and palliate mechanism. Yes, there will be a special paper on the IET. And then the quantum of a disciplinary fine. Again, it has been talked about, and we have set out the factors in paragraph 14A to D. And then item G for sections 64J and 64K, we have said that a person cannot be an insurance agent and insurance broker at the same time, so as to avoid conflict of interest. All right, any more questions on this paper 1637, 13 to 14 bracket 02? No? Then in this case, we go to 1817, 13 to 14 bracket 05. Yes, that's for the questions raised at your meeting held on the 30th of June. The first point has been covered. And then Mr. Sin Chung Kai is concerned about the IACs. He's worried whether the CEO would be too busy to sit on the ICs. We have been asked as to the practice of other similar regulators. In the annex, we have set out the practice of the SFC as well as the mandatory provident fund regulatory regime. Statutory functions and powers of the IIA. Let me say this once again. For the statutory functions of the IIA, well, we have been following the recommendations contained in the insurance core principles of the International Association of Insurance Supervisors. Let me say this again. We haven't tried to outdo the IAIS. We are not imposing an excessive regulatory burden on the industry. Paragraphs 9 to 11, I think if I am right, Ms. Ho raised this point. That's about the relationship between the Office of the Commissioner of Insurance or the IIA and the FS. We have set out the relationships, so it can be easily sort of seen from the chart in the annex. The main purpose is to have checks and balances. Paragraph 12 onwards, that's about the disciplinary process. Well, in answer to Fernando Zheng's question, I have already covered this point. That is, the person being complained will have the opportunity to be heard. Next, accounting and financial arrangements, slightly different from what we have said. The IIA's source of income, 70% is expected to be drawn from the levy, and there's a levy on the insurance policies. For the remaining 30%, we expect that they will come from license fees, including license fees imposed on insurers and intermediaries, and then some other fees for services. In Annex D, we have asked a consultant to look at the case for the first 6 years for the purpose of financial planning. Members' questions are welcome.
So paper CB1 1817 bracket 05. Yes, Mr. Mlangseng? 18D. A levy of 0.1% on insurance premiums for all insurance policies, capped at $100 for life policies and $5,000 for non-life policies. I want to know how frequently this rate will be adjusted. So I just want to know the frequency of adjustments. And then adopting an incremental approach for introducing the levy on insurance premiums. What do you mean by an incremental approach? 2 questions. Yes. The levy, Chairman. Chairman, may I refer to para 20 of the paper? So the IA will review the levy levels once its reserve has reached a level equivalent to 24 months of its operating expense, after deducting depreciation and all provisions, with a view to recommending a levy reduction. So we'll only charge a levy when at a level that is necessary. So it's like the TIC stamps. Is that right? So the users need to pay 24 months of the IIA's operating expense. What exactly do you mean? The level of operating expense may change with time. Is that right? Yes, Chairman. So when we do the calculation, we'll draw a line at a time, and then we'll calculate the operating expense. So Mr. Ng is correct. In fact, the consultants have calculated that initially the IA will have 250 staff members, and so the operating expense will be at that level. But when the IA starts operation in 2016 or 2017, we will have to carry out an assessment again at that time. Mr. Ng. Now, concerning the IIA's budget, it will not have to be approved by this council, but then the council will be informed. And then the incremental approach, may I refer to Appendix or Annex D. The first year 0.01, second year 0.05, and 0.0039 in the 6th year. 0.0001. So in fact, it's a gradual downward adjustment. No, a gradual upward adjustment. Let me supplement, Chairman. We're going to adopt an incremental approach. for the licenses of insurance companies, 0.0001. That's page 2 of NXT. Year 1, 0.0001, and then year 6, 0.0039. That's the license fee. And then the levy from 0.04% in year 1 to 0.1% in year 6. And so for the insurer's license fees, as well as the levy, there will be an incremental approach. In the first 5 years, if the income for the IA is not enough to cover its expenses, then the administration will provide a difference. All right, so year 1, 0.0001%, year 2, 0.0005%. Sorry, in fact, note 6 is the levy, note 5 is the license fee. Yes, note 5 is the license fee paid by the insurers. We propose that all insurance companies pay a low level of license fee across the board, and then we look at the total net liabilities in calculating the license fees or the variable fees. All right, any questions? Yes, Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Chairman. C. $397 million in total. And you, is it that you have to apply to FC for the funding, or will this be a loan to be taken out? We'll have to go to FC. Because these are merely estimates, and in 2009, the financial market was extremely volatile after the Lehman Brothers incident. Yes, Chairman, I do agree very much with Mr. Sin. We will be updating these figures and calculations when we go to Finance Committee. But I want to say that for the insurance industry in Hong Kong, the growth has been very impressive. Last year, the premium income was $290 billion. And so we should be able to support the operation of the IIA. But then, as Mr. Sin has pointed out, we'll update the figures when we before we go to FC. So this is a subsidy. This is a sum granted to the IIA. There will not be any repayment to the Treasury. Now we need some seed money to help the initial operation of the IIA. So my question is that the money doesn't need to be repaid. In fact, it's seed money. It's like the situation when the MPFA was set up, right? No? Yes, Chairman. Let me explain. Because we adopt an incremental approach, we need to reduce the immediate impact on the insurers and the insured. So we will adopt an incremental approach. And so in the first 5 years, the IIA will not be able to balance the books, and that's why funding from the administration is required. So in other words, the administration will be subsidizing the IIA in the initial or in the first 5 years. Now for the SFC, the levy should be based on 3 years of the annual expenses, but then the reserve has accumulated to 8 years of its annual operating expenses. And as a result, we asked the SFC to lower the levy. Because Note 6 is about the levy. Because the premium income is over $200 billion. Now, Chairman, we will update the figures before we go to Finance Committee. This is because we need to adopt one particular year for calculation purpose. When when the IA is set up, we'll have to make adjustments to the staff establishment, to the staff costs, and so on and so forth. So we will come to FC to apply for funding nearer the time. And in fact, in the paper, we have already made it clear that the levy has to be reviewed once the reserve has reached a level equivalent to 24 months of the operating expense, with a view to recommending a levy reduction. And any proposed increase or reduction in the levy will have to have the approval of LegCo. So you will come to the panel and the Finance Committee at the time the IIA is set up, and then you will be updating all the figures at that time. And if the reserve has reached a level equivalent or more to 24 months of the operating expense, then there will be a review and the levy may be adjusted downwards. Chairman, it's $390 million on the basis of 2009 figures, but when they come to Finance Committee, this amount may double, because the variables may change a lot. At the moment, you're talking about a staffing level of about 230, but and then at the same time, the scope of regulation may increase because of the growth of the industry. Now for the MPFA, the administration injected $5 billion into the authority in order to encourage or to the growth of the development of retirement protection. But then here, I think it's you can consider, say, making a repayment to the government, say 15 years later, after the IIA has begun to get a surplus. So you may consider a mixed model. I understand that we should try to reduce the shock caused to the market during the initial years, but then I think the IIA should repay the government for the money later. All right, let's now move on to 202705. Yes, Chairman. In fact, this paper is provided to respond to members' questions raised at the meeting on the 21st of July. So we have 3 sets of papers: process, review, panel report, disciplinary and appellate mechanism of other financial service regulators, and then expert panel for the disciplinary process. Our proposal is that the IIA may seek the advice of an expert panel comprising insurance industry experts before handing out sanctions. And some have suggested that the IIA must seek the advice of the expert panel before making a decision. Now, of course, the IIA has to make a decision, a disciplinary decision, in a fair and reasonable manner. And we are now proposing that the IA may, if it wants, seek the advice of the expert panel. But then we don't think it is necessary to make the seeking of advice from the expert panel mandatory. But then we understand that the industry wants the IA to take into account expert advice in coming to decisions. But of course, what is most important is that the IIA has to make a decision in a fair and reasonable manner.
Any questions, Mr. Chen Qingpo? As the admin has said, we still have our views to express. We want to facilitate the work. Maybe if you want to revoke the license, then the licensee will be affected for the entire life. And then sometimes the license may be suspended for a year or 2. So maybe you should draw a line as to at what level would expert advice be called for, because a licensee may find it difficult to switch over to another profession. We did raise this issue with the Secretary. We are looking forward to a favorable reply. Mr. Zheng, we are aware of the concern of the industry. We'll try to rely on internal guidelines, that is, under what circumstances before coming to a disciplinary decision, the IIA should seek advice from the expert panel. Say, for example, in the case of revocation, it's better for us to have such provisions in the guidelines. I think this is the case of overseas regulators as well. Well, Mr. Zhang, in the case of serious cases, unless it is a case of deliberate negligence, I think if it is a case of fraud or deception, then I think it's right to revoke the license so that the licensee won't do harm to the society again. Yes, that's the broad direction. Well, had it been the case of technical negligence and it is forgivable, then of course we hope that we can give him a chance to turn a new leaf. But then if it is a matter of deception deliberately, then I hope that the IIA in the enforcement of the law will deal with it seriously, and maybe it should be taken to court. Yes, for fraud and deception cases, yes, they will deal a blow to the industry. Now, we want to know where they would draw a line. That is, sometimes certain practices are quite common in the industry. So we hope that you can understand the practices of the industry, and we hope that someone who's familiar with the practice can also be invited to give advice, like accountants, consumer counsel, etc. So I think there's more about cases in which there isn't any deliberate acts of deception. Yes, point understood. Mr. Zhang, please have it recorded. No other questions on this paper. Then takes us to paper 186/14 to 15-02. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our response to members' requests and questions raised at your meeting on the 20th of October. First of all, what will be followed up by the IIA? We are happy to draw up a list of issues so that the future IIA can follow up on the issues that you have discussed. Next, new section 64P, as I've mentioned a moment ago, and in fact it was also raised by Mr. Kwok Wai Keung at the last meeting. That is, an intermediary must notify the IIA of any change of particulars within 14 days. There is the query as to whether the duration is adequate. The original proposal was 7 days. Now it will be extended to 14 days. If it is still not regarded as adequate, please explain and justify why 14 days would still be inadequate. So you still have open mind. Yes, but provided that it is reasonable, please justify why one cannot submit the information within 14 days. The set point. In the Chinese version of the paper, you mean item 4? No, paragraph 4. At the last meeting, Mr. Ng Leng Sing mentioned that if the IIA is to order a licensee, that there will be a suspension or revocation of license, then the licensee may be required to transfer relevant records to the clients. For the IIA to exercise this power, I think the purpose is to protect the policyholders. This is because the intermediaries or the insurers may hold certain information of the clients, in particular the most important document being the policy itself. So it is best if the information can be transferred to the clients. In the course of transfer, if documents are lost, who should bear the responsibility? Well, we are saying that we should follow the existing arrangements. In the bill, we do not actually provide for this scenario specifically. As I've mentioned, we have set up a working group on transition. Maybe that working group can try to find out what should be taken care of. Then we can go on to the fourth item, activities performed by employees of insurers. Mr. Chairman, this is about the employees of insurers. That is, whether the intermediaries are sort of affected by our licensing requirements. To cut a long story short, we've talked to the industry. We have more or less reached a consensus. In the case of professionals of insurers, if they are dealing with the management of claims, in the course of doing this, and if advice is given covering regulated activities, they do need to take a license because they are not acting as an insurance intermediary. But then if an insurer is to employ somebody specifically for intermediaries activities like selling policies, then to be fair, they should take out a license. This is because if an agent is required to take out a license, then the employees employed by insurance company should also take out a license. Therefore, we have had a discussion with the industry, and we believe that in principle, the industry is in agreement with us. If I haven't got it right, I hope Mr. Chen can rectify me. I recall that it was a point raised by Mr. Chen Tin-po. Paragraph 6. A member raised concerns, blah, blah, blah. I don't think this paragraph clearly reflects what I have said. Now, SROs only look at the insurance agents and insurance brokers. For the salespersons of insurance companies or those engaged in management, etc., the current system doesn't cover them. The self-regulatory mechanism doesn't cover them. But then some insurance companies want to play safe. Maybe some lawyers are being cautious, have asked for such employees to be licensed. Well, I think SROs won't sort of interfere. Paragraph 7, it is said that the government in the future will have an activity-based regulatory regime. Well, if you only impose the burden on intermediaries but not the insurers, of course there will be a problem. So I can appreciate the concern. The Hong Kong FI has carried out a survey to find out from the insurers. Over 100 companies came back with a reply. Well, for the regulated activities, there are about 5,000 employees could be affected. Some of them have registered. Some only take part partly. But there are also a certain number of employees who are solely in the business of sales. So we have already set out the broad principles, and we hope that the administration will be open-minded and find sufficient time to resolve the problem. Well, some companies just ask whether insurers will also be affected. I think we all want to make it clear. It seems that no one has really given sufficient consideration to such a major change. Probably no one has foreseen that it is indeed a major change, and in the course of consultation there wasn't any thorough discussion. This could be very complicated and quite broad in the scope. Quite unlike other provisions, this hasn't been discussed adequately. So I hope the OCI can understand the seriousness of the problem. Mr. Cheung or Ms. Choi, please tell us about your position on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chen has broadly talked about the crux of the matter. As the law stands, we are not clear on the requirements. So in the past, nobody was actually very clear as to the requirements. As Mr. Chen has said, some insurance companies did ask their employees who are involved in the sales to be licensed. Quite a large number of them, but of course some haven't been licensed. Now, the current position is unclear. In the future, we propose that it should be activity-based. That is, if someone is engaged in sales, in customer service, that is, advice will be given to clients, and then clients will then make a major decision, like whether there will be renewal or whether to take out a policy. Then in such cases, everybody should be treated the same. If agents and brokers are subject to the regulatory regime, then employees of insurers should also be regulated likewise. So that's our basic principle. Well, insurance companies and some intermediaries, associations, did come back with certain views during the last round of consultation. Now there is a strong voice of concern from the industry, and I can appreciate this. So we have been taking up this matter. Mention has been made about the likely number of employees to be affected, 5,000 being given. Well, I think that's the highest number possible. Anybody who may have contacts with the clients, like a receptionist at the reception counter, who may come across with the conversation with clients, and somebody who answers telephone calls, etc. But then, in fact, we are not aiming at such employees. What is important is that we try to cover those who will go out to do the marketing work and people who would give advice which would result in clients renew a policy, suspending a policy, or taking out policy. So we'll try to look at the insurer's case individually and try to find out about the classification of services provided. So we have got the information from all the insurers. We believe that for those who have been affected and who haven't been licensed, there will just be about 1,000.
About 1,400 to 1,500, I suppose. For the rest, they may be secretaries receiving phone calls or receptionists at the reception counter. And there may also be employees who have to call the clients because they need to handle claims. So we believe that about 1,300 to 1,500 will be caught. But then, of course, I do agree with Mr. Chan that we need to adopt an open-minded approach in the light of the industry's concerns. In fact, we have had meetings with the industry. We have explained to them our intention. We do not want to create a loophole because some employees will not need to be regulated. And we believe that the industry understands our intention. We'll continue to liaise with the Federation of Insurers. We'll try to clarify the wording. We'll be having more meetings with the Federation to come up with the most suitable wording. And we will report back to members after we've reached a consensus. I understand that for employees in insurance companies, if they come into contact with insurance business, then they will need to be licensed. Now, say for example, if I'm a receptionist and I merely meet the company's clients, then of course I don't need to be licensed. But then if I deal with insurance business, then I will have to be licensed. Yes, Chairman, you're correct. Now, if employees are involved in regulated activities, and if they may influence the clients in making certain decisions, then they need to be licensed. So we need to come up with the best wording to reflect our legislative intent. We do not want the industry to be worried that some employees who do not handle insurance businesses have to be licensed. And what about internal audits? We'll be discussing the details of the industry. For those carrying out internal audits, if they do not need to contact the clients, then they may not need to be licensed. Those doing internal audits will be regulated under a separate category, and they will have to get, in fact, prior approval from the IIA. And so for those carrying out internal audits, they will be regulated by other provisions, not this one, on intermediaries. Now, why have I mentioned internal audits? These people do corporate auditing, but some of them also audit individual cases. And if it's the latter case, then do they need to be licensed? I mean, they do not contact the clients directly, but then they may, in their work, deal with insurance businesses. So we're not talking about those who only give a cup of tea to the client. Those working in a back office, do they need to be licensed too? Yes, Chairman. For back office support staff, for clerical staff, they will not have to be licensed. Yes, for those providing support in the back office, they do not need to be licensed. But then there are some who are responsible for settlement. They really have to handle the client's cases. I'm not talking about those carrying out general clerical duties. Yes, I understand what you mean. For internal audit, those responsible for internal audits, those responsible for compliance, they are dealt with by another provision. But here, we're talking about those who contact the clients for sales and marketing purposes. In other words, promoting policies, advising policyholders to, say, enhance their insurance protection. Yes, she has mentioned compliance and internal audit. What about those carrying out sales support activities? No need. You mean those supporting the sales staff, but they will not meet the clients. They will not be selling products to the clients. Concerning sales support, the internal monitoring and regulation, and also the post-sales confirmation calls. These are the responsibility of the company and of the and also the responsibility of the compliance section and the internal audit section. Here we are talking about those carrying out sales activities, right? Do you understand? It is not that I don't understand, Chairman. You know, sometimes there are some gray areas or unclear areas. Now, of course, the receptionist sitting at the entrance needs not be licensed. But then I think those carrying out support duties for the sales department may need to be licensed. So you think we should err on the stricter side, is that right? Now, the sales staff, of course, need to be licensed. But does it mean that all staff, apart from the sales staff, can be exempted? Now, concerning intermediaries involved in regulated activities, our thinking is that the sales staff and the staff providing customer service will be covered. Maybe after the meeting, I can talk to Mr. Sin in greater detail concerning who should be covered and who need not be covered. All right, so you have to iron out the matter with Mr. Sin.
Mr. Chen, Of course, it is the gray area that we need to address. Let's not have an argument so early because I think it's better to leave it to the industry to take up with the administration. It isn't a matter of having a dispute. We should try our best to remove the gray areas. Any other questions? No other questions? Then we move on to another paper, 257/14 to 15 bracket 02. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is about our response to members' questions asked at the meeting on the 11th of November 2014. First of all, relationship between insurers and insurance agents. Existing Section 68 already provides that an insurer has to bear liability for the actions of its appointed insurance agents. For Section 68 bracket 2, it does say that an insurer cannot exclude or limit its liability for the actions of its appointed insurance agent in the dealings. Now we're going to amend the provision. We are going to have a licensing regime. There will be a change in the words used. So we'd like to seek some textual amendments. As far as the existing scope of liability of an insurer for the acts of an insurance agent appointed, we don't intend to change. Any questions? Secondly, conduct requirements of insurance intermediaries. At the last meeting, it is said that one of the requirements is such that an intermediary may only give advice on matters for which he is competent to advise. There is an argument that if he has got a license, then he should be regarded as being competent. How come that we have this specific provision? We have to make it clear that when you take out a license, all you have to do is to meet certain requirements concerning your educational attainment and passing certain professional qualifying examinations. Then you get your license. But it doesn't mean that a person has adequate knowledge to give advice on each and every insurance matters. Now, our requirement is that you only give advice on matters for which you are competent to advise. And then, say for example, a person may have taken out a license but has never had any experience on aircraft liability insurance, and for him to give advice to a client concerning aircraft liability, then he won't be regarded as being competent in this matter. So that's why we still require to provide for such a contact requirement. Next, that's about the disciplinary process of insurance intermediaries. Last time the question was whether it would be open to public. The disciplinary proceedings won't be open to the public, but then the disciplinary hearing will. I think you are trying to answer my question, right? Well, you are saying that insurers won't have to take on extra liability. But I have to point out that if it is known to the insurer that the intermediary is not doing something he's competent to do so, then it is not right. Well, the lawyer for the Hong Kong FI has given a piece of advice. I've given that piece of advice to Eddie. Please comment on that. I'm not sure whether this is the case or not, but lawyers do come up with such a piece of opinion, so please comment on that. Mr. Chairman, I must say that I don't understand because the bill doesn't add anything. You don't understand? You don't understand? Then you must talk to him. I want to put it on record clearly that the bill doesn't impose any extra liability like the one mentioned by the Hong Kong FI. I think it may not actually be adding to the liability. Maybe originally there was a gray area. Now the problem has been identified. Chair, I think you have been very experienced in chairing Bills committee meetings. Now in the past it might be in a gray area. Now you want to clarify and then the liability will be established. It doesn't matter. I think it's better to clarify the position. Eddie is also a lawyer. I think sometimes lawyers' language is not easy to understand. That's why we have to pay for the service of lawyers. Yes, we will go back. We'll come back to the Hong Kong FI's point. Mr. Sin has left. Any other questions, Mr. Chen? No, just on that one. No. Well, for all the papers in our backlog have all been cleared today. We still have 15 minutes left. So I suggest that we start a new paper. (257/14-15) Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is rather technical, but we have gone through it on many occasions, and that's about the transitional arrangements for insurance intermediaries. Well, there are two items as far as the bill is concerned. First of all, before the setting up of the IAA, if a person has successfully registered with one of the three SROs, upon setting up of the IAA, this person will automatically become a licensee for 3 years. And in those 3 years' time, an administrative fee will not be imposed on him. In paragraph 5 of our paper, we have tabulated the paper, the information. Do you have this one with you? Yes, in paragraph 5, it says that we have a number of categories of intermediaries. Upon setting up of the IIA, they will become licensees of different categories. This is straightforward. I don't think we need to have a discussion. And then we may want to have a discussion of something more complicated. In the transitional period, SROs may be dealing with complaints and appeals, and then they are still outstanding at the time that the IIA is set up. What should we do? So the bill will mainly address this category of cases. When we considered the arrangements, first of all, we have to protect the interests of the policyholders. That is, his interests will not be affected by the setting up of the IIA. He will still be able to seek to redress the problem. We must also be fair and reasonable when we deal with the intermediaries. Say, for example, an SRO may impose a decision. Maybe there's an appeal, and this right to appeal will still be maintained. Otherwise, it's not fair towards the intermediaries. We want to make sure that it is sound, and we don't want to impose any inconvenience. We also hope that it won't affect the efficiency of the IIA. The annex has set out something very complicated. It's not easy to understand, but then we try to simplify it, and we've tried to set out the factors to be considered. In the first slide, prior to the setting up the IIA, if the SRO handling a case of complaint or a disciplinary hearing, and if it has already been started, then the IA would follow this up. And then the new statutory powers, the new statutory procedures will be relied upon. But it's a case from the past, but you're going to use new powers and new procedures. But then the standards will be the existing ones, the old ones, like a case in 2010. Then the standards or the penalties will be the same as those prevailing in 2010. Yes, the penalties will be the old ones. Well, there will be checks and balances, there will be provisions to be followed. And then we have penalties, we have fines, but in the past we don't. So when we deal with such cases, we cannot invoke the new penalties. We can only impose the previous penalties. And then appeal cases which haven't been completed at the time the IIA is set up, then the IAT will follow this up. We will use the new statutory procedures, but we will invoke the previous sets of standards. And then there may be disciplinary sanctions that have already been imposed by the SROs before the setting up of the IIA. Say, for example, the registration may have been suspended for a year. In the interim, the IIA is set up, so what will be done? Our proposal is that upon the setting up of the IIA, for those sanctions imposed by the SROs, they will continue to be in force. Say, for example, you are suspended for a year, but you won't have it cut short just because the IA is being set up. So if it is a year's time, then it will be good for 1 year. And then if we have got registration applications or change of information, we won't follow this up, because what we want to do is that unless you have already been validly registered prior to the setting up of the IAA, then you will be deemed to be a licensee. In other words, you have to apply afresh to the IAA. And then if you want to have a change of information, again, you have to inform the newly set up IAA. Yes, correct. And then we have already set up a working group on transition with industry representatives and representatives from the 3 SROs. And in fact, this working group is talking about such transitional arrangements. We want to have a deadline. Say, for example, 1st of January, a particular year, we're going to set up the IAA, and then 2 months prior, we have to impose a deadline, and we will no longer be receiving further fresh applications. You have to talk to the industry. There's when you are going to draw a line. Yes, the consensus is that you will have a time limit deadline as to when. Yes, we are taking this up with the industry. We have got another paper, and that's about the IAT 257/14-15 you have a question? Then let's go back to paper 03. Mr. Chen. So you would agree with us that it is only reasonable for us to be judged by the old standards and subject to the old penalties despite the setting up of the new IIA. Now, it is believed that the drafting is not perfect. It is hoped that there will be some amendments. I will refer our lawyer's advice to you. I think he would like to see something more to be added so as to make it clear. Now, there will be the IAT in future. In the past, there wasn't. SROs don't have the power to award costs. So before the setting up of the IAT, outstanding cases should not be subject to the mechanism of awarding costs. Yes, awarding costs. Now, for the new procedures, the tribunal may impose a cost. But for the previous SROs, there isn't this question. So for the outstanding cases, for them to be taken up by the IA, what will happen if cost is involved?
Wage.
So is it that the cost will have to be paid? So they are of the view that if the three bodies at the moment have these powers, then the future IIA will also have these powers. And then what if insurers violate the code of conduct? They also want this transitional arrangement. Because this paper is on intermediaries. And the lawyer has said that you should also take into account insurers. So I will relay the lawyer's concerns to you. Yes, I think they've looked at even the minute details. So please consider the details. Yes, I think the principles have been clarified, but then I think we need to also clarify the details. Mr. Kok Wai Keung, I want to ask a question about para 12, Chairman. It says that if an SRO has imposed a disciplinary sanction before the commencement date, that the sanction shall continue to take effect. But then it says if an SRO has imposed a fine on an SRO registrant before the commencement date, it may recover any unpaid part of the fine as a civil debt on or after the commencement date. So in future, will you make the legal costs and the cost for civil cases higher? And what if this SRO registrant refuses to pay? Though I don't think this is going to happen, but what if this really happens? Yes, Deputy Secretary. Now, because at the moment the SRO can impose a fine on brokers, but not the agents. So if the broker refuses to pay, then the two SROs will have to try to recover the unpaid fine as a civil debt. So we're talking about brokers here. But what if the SRO tries to recover the civil debt? Then there will also be legal costs. In other words, the AII will not recover any fine or unpaid fine for the SRO. No. Because the SRO will have to take its own civil action. And the IIA, in looking at the conduct of an intermediary, also studies his track record. And the track record, of course, includes non-payment of fine. A broker should not think that as an IIA will be set up, and so he needs not pay the fine to the SRO. If he thinks so, then he is wrong. But time's about up. But at the moment, now if a broker refuses to pay a fine, then the SRO can cancel the license. Is that right? So what action did the SRO take as a civil debt? Do we any meetings after 4:30 in this conference room? Then we can extend the meeting by 15 minutes. All right. So we've dealt with on many papers today. So we can deal with paper 04 next time. Date of next meeting, 9th December, Tuesday, 2:30. And then 22nd December, 10:45 a.m. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.